The year was 1982 and I was 10 years old. My grandmother brought me to see a mystic come seer. He was world-renowned, or so I was told. One needs to queue for months just to get a number to see him. Head wrapped in a yellow scarf, he would enter into a trance, after which he would do one of three things: divine the future, dispense invaluable advice, or answer the questions of his clients. When I reached there with my grandma, there was a sneaking queue of more than 100 people. There were Europeans, Americans, Taiwanese, and legions of Singaporeans. All had traveled to this small seaside village in Johor, Malaysia, just to consult this old man in his ramshackle wooden hut. Now, after studying me for a minute or so, the mystic launched into a trance before giving my grandma what she wanted, a prophecy of my future. Trust me, my grandma wore a billion-dollar smile for days after that. And of course she would. Why wouldn't she? Especially when she was told that I, her favorite grandson, would become very rich by the age of 32 if I studied diligently and smartly. Now, according to my grandma, as the chosen one in our family, the cast iron method to fulfill my prophecy was to become either a big-time lawyer or a prominent doctor. And the strategy compass for that: study very, very hard for all my school subjects and try very, very, very hard to ace them. Now, back in those days, if one wanted to enter medical school, the classic subject combination was triple science. As such, I took up the triple science combination in RI for the O-level and subsequently in RJC for the A-levels. Yes, back in those days, we could take 3 sciences at year 5 and year 6. Unlike now, according to my form teacher then, triple science was the ideal path for discerning students who wanted to have the broadest options for university. With triple science, you can apply to any faculty you wish to, subject to your grades, of course, be it medicine, computer architecture, law, or pretty much everything else. Well, did I really like triple science and mathematics? Make no mistake, I enjoyed reading about quantum mechanics and Schrodinger's cat in physics. I relish learning about mRNA and chromosomes in biology. I am thrilled whenever I learn about the cracking of a long unsolved mathematical conundrum. And I still do to this present day. But did I really and truly feel energized and inspired by these subjects? I'll be frank with you, not really. The only reason why I chose these subjects and tried to excel in them was because I was foolishly beholden to the prophecy and to the idea that the best professions in the world can be enumerated by just 2 fingers of my hand: medicine and law. As a young boy growing up, I was taught that acing the exams was the surefire way to propel one onto the path of conventional success. As a teenager studying in upper primary and secondary school, I picked up the notion that good grades define a good student. I belong to Gen X. All of you studying at RI now belong to Gen Z. My time at RI and RJC was over 33 years ago. The premises, the scoring system, the makeup of the students may have changed. But what about the essence of education? The term reimagining education caught on as a sexy buzz phrase when COVID-19 struck. Too often, reimagining education in the new normal really means adding more and more edtech into lessons in school, students spending more of their learning time online, or perhaps immersing themselves in some AI-based educational platform. That said, while edutech definitely facilitates learning and delivery of lessons in some aspects, on its own, it probably does not address the inherent limitations of our education system. Traditionally, success in education means narrowing your places in elite schools and generating a few oohs and ahs of admiration when you tell them the identity of your alma mater, or burnishing your academic transcript with a string of excellent or bravo remarks. However, given two choices between being yours truly, Alvin Kuek, and George Kuek, whom would you rather be? Me, a reasonably competent student in his younger days with a string of academic qualifications, or perhaps George Kuek, he who only had basic secondary school education but went on to found the BreadTalk F&B empire. Other than my self-proclaimed more youthful looks, there is just a teeny-weeny difference between both of us. A few $100 million Singapore dollars. Now, I'm not saying that we should not study hard or quit JC or university. No, not at all. I do not mean that. However, given the way that the world has evolved, we now have a unique opportunity to look at philosophical shifts to nurture a new generation of energetic and curious learners. The state of education has always been tied to the stage of human evolution. Back in the Stone Age, education was like an extreme outdoor survival camp. Hunting and gathering skills were of paramount importance. Physical survival was a raison d'etre. Advanced mathematical skills was poor defense against the marauding bear. After Singapore's independence, our education focused on the core skills needed for nation building: engineering, mathematics, and sciences. Today, we are a developed nation and we live in the information age. What and how then should education be? Formal education and textbook knowledge definitely play a very important role in building our foundational knowledge, and even more so in professional fields like computer science, engineering, medicine, architecture, and accounting. After all, the intellectual advancement of its people was what propelled Singapore from a third world country to a first world nation in just one generation. I have spent pretty much the half century of my life being a student, a finance professional in the private sector, a lecturer, an entrepreneur, and a teacher, having crossed paths with all types of students and adults from all walks of life. Allow me to share some of the insights I've gained over the years insofar as to how education can possibly be reimagined. I guess it is pretty hard to dispute that the most precious thing that anybody can own is knowledge. That being the case, education should be reimagined in a way that all students can be continually motivated and be inspired to acquire knowledge. If one is not enthused to embark on the journey of learning, whatever education system which we have or can reimagine about will not be the panacea. Make no mistake, education is absolutely crucial to the process of change. When I came to Singapore as an RI scholar in the late 1980s, the exchange rate was 1 Singapore dollar to 1.1 ringgit Malaysia. 3 decades later, the exchange rate is 1 Singapore dollar to 3.2 ringgit Malaysia. Think about it. What drove this diverging economic disparity between Singapore and Malaysia? In a word, education. A good education system was fundamental to the transformation of Singapore from a backwater country with no natural resources to a global financial and trading hub. So it is clear, education is necessary for transformation, and access to education clearly is transformational for every single person. That's why, in order to give everyone the best opportunity to thrive in our new world, we need to make education as accessible and as inclusive as possible. Not only that, we need to ensure that all students have access to a more ideal type of education. Think about it. What is the value of memorization and rote learning when much information is at the tip of one's simply with a few clicks of Google. If I may say so, the value of formal schooling in this era of the internet, therefore, does not reside in the facts and the numbers that we learn to memorize, but rather in the nurturing of the independent and analytical thinking skills that will allow us to confidently tackle a myriad of problems. Now, some of the jobs today in 2022 definitely didn't exist during my time as a student in the 1980s and 1990s. The black swan events of our lifetime, the COVID-19 pandemic, has caused massive upheavals in our world. Some industries practically disappeared overnight, while others mushroomed and thrived. Since we could not really foresee all this happening in the space of just 2 short years when the pandemic took hold, can we even envisage what types of industries and jobs will emerge in the future? If we can't, just how do you think we can prepare students for future jobs, future industries, and future situations, given the fact that they do not yet even exist at this point in time? Now, to address this conundrum, we need to change our mindset. Every subject we learn in school is important, be it language arts, chemistry, mathematics, or geography. However, the problem is for most of subjects is that students are not able to develop an emotional bond with them, simply because students do not see their real world value. That is not a good thing. Why? Emotion is the catalyst for interest, and interest in turn is the catalyst for learning. By demonstrating that whatever students are learning for various subjects have a practical link to the real world, students are then more likely to stay involved and engaged. They are more likely to develop more profound and holistic understanding. Unfortunately, this emotional connection between students and subjects is rarely nurtured in schools in our present system. That's why we need to be brave enough to imagine an education system which weaves in not just the technical knowledge, but also practical, real-world, social aspects. As a student in upper secondary and junior college, I wanted to be educated on businesses and its organizational processes. I desired to embrace the up-and-coming IT revolution that was just at the cusp of arriving in 1990. Computers, word processing, and a World Wide Web. But I didn't have the chance then as a JC student. And other than the prohibition of taking up triple science in year 5 and year 6 in your generation, I guess nothing much has essentially changed. Then I preferred learning about these non-school subjects to cramming my head with the formulae of organic molecules and navigating the complexities of trigonometry. Why? Because other than using molecular and mathematical formulae to ace exams, I failed to see their relevance to the world at large. In other words, I had no emotional bond with the subjects I was actually studying in school. Just imagine, how much more interesting would it be if an English literary analysis question were not just based on how strong your grammar or vocabulary is, but also how well you can present the case eloquently and offer divergent viewpoints? Is it just a literary piece with no meaningful real-world value, or a thoroughly insightful one? Just say, does studying a famous poem by Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, have any real value? Contrast this with the George Orwell classic 1984, a dystopian novel which introduced to the world the term Big Brother. Personally, I find it is a real pity that schools in Singapore don't make this brilliant novel essential reading for all students, as it is so relevant in our world today. Just flick through the pages of the newspaper and you will find many instances of Big Brothers lurking around and in practically every corner of cyberspace. The reason why we are setting up the ipso facto and master speaker student clubs for our 11 students at my session next year is actually an attempt to inspire them to study English in a real world context and not just to master English to ace the exams. So, How should all of you students look to education in our new normal? In a world where standing still is not an option, in a world where standing still is the perfect recipe for stagnation and irrelevance. How then should we learn in such a universe so as to thrive and perhaps make an impact on both yourselves and the community we live in? Firstly, be fully aware of what is going on in Singapore, the region, and the world at large. I cannot overstress the importance of this. From my own personal experience, this out-of-the-book education would enable you to rather easily stand out from amongst the vast majority of those who don't. Believe me, such nuggets of wisdom, which can never be gleaned from school textbooks, will enable you to identify gaps, proactively address upcoming challenges, exploit unexploited opportunities, and capitalize on future unidentified ones. Secondly, volunteer for activities that provide you opportunities to apply what you're currently learning in schools to the things that happen around us on a day-to-day basis. This can be projects in a community center, sharing your insights and experience at TED Talks at RI, or even something as conventional as mentoring those in society who are uninspired or less privileged. Generally, people only sit down and think when they are confronted with problems. And mind you, these problems should never just be confined to what you face in tutorial lessons or in the examination hall. So be gung-ho, be brave, and see these opportunities and problems as a super way to learn, not just as something dispiriting and frustrating. Thirdly, be open-minded and never pigeonhole or think that you can only do certain things. A long, long time ago, my mother told me, Alvin, stop having grand dreams about starting out on your own. Everyone in the Kuek family is born to work for people, so please accept your lot. One JC teacher told me, Alvin, your personality tests indicate that you are better at hardcore academic subjects and you lack the attributes of a leader. So you should confine yourselves to activities that suit your personality. Had I believed and held as Bible what my mother and my JC teachers said, I probably won't be here today speaking to all of you in a TED Talk. So today, I challenge you to explore, create, invent, and problem solve. Be open to exploration, wonder, and curiosity. Pay attention to where your own thinking leads, as it might surprise you. The subjects we learn in school will change through the ages, be it the Stone Age or the Information Age. That said, there is a common thread. The purpose of education is always to equip you with skills that will enable you to solve problems and improve lives. So are you ready to grasp this essence of education? If we want this future, we have to reimagine and invent it. Thank you.